Hi everyone, I'm Lady Teddy. I'm going to be reading to you guys from Magium, which is a text-based choose-your-own-adventure story game app that is free on both Android and iOS, and it's really, really good. There's a lot of different paths you can take throughout it, so I highly recommend you guys... time to begin the tale. So I highly recommend you guys download it and play it for yourself. If you guys like the story and are interested in it and don't want to play it for yourselves, all of my previous readings are on YouTube in a Magium playlist, which you guys can get a direct link to that playlist if you do ! Magium. I finally set that up. If you're wondering why I'm dressed like this, I did a sub goal reward last month where I would cosplay as Minnie Mouse. This is the first time I've been able to dress up with the Minnie Mouse in full, so I hope you guys like it. It's yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out. I tried to dye my hair black and it didn't really work, but I do think it is dark enough that it works for the costume. And I also really hope that it washes out because I don't think it looks bad, but I like my hair lighter than this. Yeah. Okay, so I wouldn't recommend if I'm getting messed up on my spiel right now. So if anyone has any questions, you feel free to ask. I know it is in the middle of the story. We are in the middle of book 2, chapter 10. This is the third part of it. And we're in the middle of a combat scene right now, too. I'd been reading for 2.5 hours. It was 4 a.m. and I really needed to go to bed. So, yeah, we're starting in the middle of combat. The way that I do this is I'm doing a smart, good berry playthrough. So if it's a good or a smart decision, I will generally make the decision for us. If it is just conversational or directional, I will allow you guys to participate. If people want to just fall asleep or relax and not participate, that is absolutely okay. What I do is I read out what the options are and then I make the decision. If no one says anything, I'll make the decision after a minute. If people do want to participate, I'll go with whatever the majority of the chat has decided. You're on YouTube now? You're checking out my YouTube, or you're just in a general YouTube, Carrie King? Either way, cool. I'm also on YouTube right now. I've got a fireplace going on in the background. Phoenix Fire Critic, hello! Welcome in. Peace be with me. Thank you. Peace be with you as well. Got a killer toothache. You're gonna try to go to sleep. Have a good... I'm really sorry to hear that. I hope that feels better soon. And it's nothing serious. Sweet dreams, Ivy. Thank you for hanging out. Okay, and I also have all sound alerts turned off right now, so I would not recommend redeeming any of those. Okay. Yeah, here we go. Hey, I know what that goes. You're fighting one too. You can see yourself on YouTube, your Twitch username. Oh, so you're checking... Are you... in one of my videos, or just... Oh, well, cool. I think that does tend to happen when you participate in my chat, and then you watch the video of that. Count of 3, we swing into each other, knock the tooth out. Cheer for Darren. Is Darren your favorite character? Darren is one of my least favorite characters, honestly. I find him so pretentious. Oh, the option. I hadn't even looked yet. Okay. After a short walk, Telemac stops at a distance of about 100 feet from Darren, and he eyes him intensely. As the sage and Darren are getting ready to start their battle, everyone is everyone else temporarily stops what they are doing to watch the fight, except for the black-haired banshee who is still flying after Flower and shooting various spells at her. Cheer for Darren, insult the sage, stay silent, and watch the fight. We're in the middle of a fight where they're in this world. On the main continents, there are 4 sages: Sage of the North, South, East, West, and they are like the most powerful sages of that region, most powerful mages of that region. And they are fighting Talmak, who I believe is the Sage of the North, and he's kind of a douchebag. So, he was flying in the air fighting against Hadric, and they just traded, and Darren convinced Talmak to fight him on the ground. So yeah, now that's what they're doing. I see that Azafel has already picked the first option. I don't have a preference for this. Well, I do have a preference. First or second. Because I feel like it's smart to try and piss off the sage a little bit. Oh, we've got one for each of them. One of you guys needs to change teams, because right now y'all are, like, all 3 options are tied. I love having so many people participating right now. Thank you guys. Okay, but I'm gonna give it, I don't know, like 15 seconds or something to drink water. Okay, so so I see 3 votes for Cheer for Darren. Cool. And 1 vote for go back. Well, Cheer for Darren then. Chihuahua Huita, welcome in. Thank you for the first time chat. How are you doing? You can do it, Darren, I say. If you win this fight, they will be writing stories of you for many more years to come. I mean, we could always go back if y'all decide you don't like this answer. This is going to be his last story, boy, Tomek says. I'm going to make sure of it. The sage then creates 2 boulders that are twice the size of Darren, and he launches them both towards him with his earth magic. Darren uses his sword to slice through the 2 boulders in a single motion, but instead of cutting them, the sword goes through them as through butter, and the rocks get smaller and smaller in the span of a few seconds until they become marble-sized. The 2 marbles then begin to rotate around Darren's sword as if the blade were their center of gravity. What? Talmek says, in a state of shock. No, this can't be. The sage immediately creates 2 more boulders that are even larger than before, and he throws them both at his opponent, while Darren begins to slowly walk towards him. Just like last time, Darren slashes through the 2 rocks in one motion, which causes them to shrink and join the other 2 marbles in gravitating around the sword. Excuse me. What's the matter, Talmak? Darren says, with a dark look in his eyes as he continues to slowly walk towards him. Weren't you going to punish me for my insolence? Sage Talmak! Noldorin shouts as the sage is beginning to panic a little. Darren's sword can absorb the elements. You can't fight him with any rocks that are magically created. Use regular rocks. He won't be able to absorb them fast enough. Oh, so that's how it is, Talmek says. He then begins to use his magic to pull several large boulders out of the earth, but before he manages to do it, Darren flings a sword at him with all his might, which sends the 4 marbles flying towards the sage. The stone marbles quickly regain their original sizes in mid-flight, while Talmak is forced to drop the rocks that he was pulling from the earth and to make a large, thick wall of stone in front of him, in order to defend himself against the incoming boulders. His wall isn't enough to guard him completely, however, and one of the boulders manages to hit him directly, knocking him on his back. "Don't let him stab you with that sword!" Noldorin shouts. "He has a technique that can sever your link to the magical plane." Phoenix, I'm glad you like it. As Darren makes a rush towards Talmak, the sage touches the ground with his hand while he's still lying on his back, and then the earth immediately begins to shake with such power that it makes us all fall to the ground. While the earthquake is still going, Talmak raises himself into the air with yet another floating platform, while the earth below our feet is shaking so violently that it's beginning to crack. "Damn it, he's cheating again," I say, as I look at the sage flying off in the sky. "I think we may be having some bigger problems to deal with at the moment," Darren says, as he's struggling to get back on his feet due to the violent earthquake. This reminds you of EA games, The Immortal. Haven't heard of it. Soon the cracks in the ground grow larger, and the earth itself begins to split in half, creating a large bottomless chasm right in front of our eyes. As if this weren't enough, large chunks of rock are now being pulled from under our feet, leaving us with no ground to stand on and sending us falling into the great abyss below. The elf immediately makes a floating magical barrier below his feet, and another one for Noldorin, while Kate makes several floating ice platforms right below us in order to save us from the fall. Just before we reach the platforms, Kate, Layla, Darren, Hadrick, and I all find ourselves suddenly floating in mid-air as we are getting slowly raised from the chasm. When we look up, we see Melindra floating a few dozen feet above us, with that serious expression in her eyes again, while she's making slow hand movements to aid her in directing the currents that are keeping us afloat. Very hard 7 levels NES title. I don't know what that means. New to gaming, sorry. "Melindra!" Flowers says, as she is still being chased by the black-haired banshee in midair. "You shouldn't be casting powerful spells so soon after being healed." "I'm fine," Melindra says, while she pulls us out of the pit. "Don't worry about me. You should be worrying about what that sage is doing up there instead." Nintendo Entertainment. Okay, so very hard 7 levels Nintendo Entertainment System. Interesting. Are you able to play it on non-Nintendo systems? As we all take a look... My nose is itching. And it's smearing the makeup. I'm trying so hard not to smear it over the rest of my face. Just tap. As we all take a look to see what's happening, we are shocked to find out that all of the rocks which were being pulled from the ground are now gathering up to form a 50-foot tall golem made out of stone, with the sage standing inside with the sage standing inside its head on his floating platform from before. "Why don't you try absorbing this golem with your sword, Darren?" Talmak shouts from above. "Maybe you'll manage to scratch the sole of its foot before it stomps you to death." He then uses his earth powers to move the walls of rock on the sides of the chasm closer together in order to create a path for a stone giant to walk on. The earth is trembling violently once more as the pit below us gets narrower by the second, until the walls forming the crevice get joined together, leaving nothing but a small crack in the earth between them. In the meantime, Melindra makes us all float until we are a relatively safe distance from the golem, and then she lands us on the ground. "Healer, you might want to make a barrier around everyone," Melindra says, "and make it stronger than any barrier you've ever cast before. I do not have a lot of control over the spells that I'm about to use from this moment onwards." "Oh," Darren says. "All right, I'm on it." He then uses his shield to make a semi-transparent magical barrier around all of us, while Melindra begins to fly higher into the air. "Flower, you need to take your fight elsewhere," Melindra says. "Get as far away from here as possible. I'm not planning to hold back." "Okay," Flower says. "Follow me, Banshee! This way!" She then propels herself in the direction opposite of the golem with her fire jets, as the black-haired Banshee rushes to follow her. When Flower is safely out of the way, Melindra casts a spell, and suddenly we can see hundreds of sharp-looking blades of wind rotate around her at great speed. The wind blades are likely sharpened in the same way that Luna or Kate sharpen their own elements, and they're mostly transparent, except for when the light of the sun shines on them. While Melindra is raising herself higher up, the giant made of stone begins to move forward at a slow pace, and the sage's henchmen are now hurrying to get out of the golem's way so that they won't get stepped on. The game will literally make you throw your controller to the ground, but the challenge is worth it. Or pull out hair. Have you played Myst? Myst is very frustrating. The puzzles are just insane. But very good. Jorge from Peru, welcome in. Thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate you. Oh, I've played Return to Zork a little bit. Didn't get very far in it, though. All of a sudden, while Melinda is raising herself higher up, the giant made of stone begins to move forward at a slow pace, and the sage's henchmen are now hurrying to get out of the golem's way so that they won't get stepped on. All of a sudden, Melindra loses control of one of her wind blades, which flies at an incredible speed right into the ground in front of us, cutting through it as if it were made of paper. "Damn," Darren says as he looks at the hole in the ground left by the blade from earlier. "I really hope that my barrier is strong enough to protect us from one of these if it hits us." "Would your barrier work more effectively if we huddled closer together? Maybe you could try to use your sword to absorb the wind blades. What would y'all like to do? Oh shit. Azafel, thank you. I already had it like set up, but I forgot to press done. Thank you so much. Y'all have about a minute. Whether they could see them or not isn't really relevant. The shield that he's going to be creating is basically a dome. So it should be there no matter what. Okay. Well, I saved here, so no matter what, we can go back. So I saw... It looks like 2 for Huddle Close. Okay. Would your barrier work more effectively if we huddled closer together? Yeah, that would help a little because I'd need to cover less area. Darren says, "Come on, let's get closer to each other, and I'll make the barrier smaller." We all gather closer to Darren, and he recasts his barrier, this time with a much narrower area of effect. I heard what you were saying about me earlier, you know. Melindra shouts at the sage from high up in the sky, with a rather calm tone in her voice. I heard you talking about how you needed to keep me alive while dissecting me. You sure do have some nerve to speak about a Stillwater like this, don't you? You're a little too late, Stillwater girl, Talmek shouts at her. Maybe you could have stopped me before I made this golem, but now even one of your tornadoes won't be able to destroy what I've created. I don't know what you're trying to do with those small, rotating blades of yours, but I assure you that they will not help you in any way. Is that so? Melindra says. I've heard enough of your talking, Talmek says. If I can't use you as an experiment, then you have no value to me. Prepare to die. After the sage stops talking, his golem quickly extends its right arm towards Melindra, and it tries to crush her in its hand. However, as soon as the hand tries to close in around Melindra, the hundreds of wind blades that were rotating around her react all at once, and they cut the rock into tiny pieces in a matter of seconds. No, Talmek says, in complete shock as he looks at the golem arm before him, which is now missing its hand entirely. I believe it I believe it is time to show you, Sage Talmak, why air is the strongest of all the magical elements, Melindra says as she unleashes 10 times more blades than she had before, throwing them all in the stone giant's direction. Thousands of wind blades all soar through the air at breathtaking speed, and for a few seconds, we could all see the giant spectacle of shimmering lights as the sun was getting reflected into each of the blades in turn. The great stone giant from before was now being sliced into pieces before our very eyes, and while the sage was still trying to bring several boulders from the ground to replace some of the lost parts, these rocks were getting cut as well by the multitude of semi-transparent air blades that Melindra was still sending towards Talmak. A few stray blades also hit Darren's barrier during this time, but it seems to be holding well for now. Yeah, Melindra's a badass. When he realizes that there's no way his regular rocks can withstand Melindra's bombardment, Talmak quickly creates a wall in front of him, and then he uses his magic to fortify it as much as he can. Delvrim! The sage shouts at his elf companion. Get us out of here now! We won't last for another minute at this rate! As you wish, Sage Talmak, the elf says, and then he starts to cast a teleportation spell on himself and all of his allies. When she hears the elf, Melindra sends a few blades his way, but the mage raises a barrier in front of him, which deflects all of her attacks. No! The banshee shouts as her body is beginning to vibrate and to shine with a bright light, while the same thing happens to all of her companions. Don't take me with you! Leave me here, damn it! I'm not done with... Before she gets to finish what she had to say, the banshee gets teleported out of the area, and the same happens to Talmak, Noldorin, and the elf. As soon as our enemies disappear, Melindra dismisses all of her wind blades while she begins to descend towards us, while Flower is also flying our way. Wow, Darren says when Melindra gets close to us. That was really impressive. Nice try, healer, Melindra says as she lands on the ground next to us, but I think we both know that this isn't really what you're thinking. What you're thinking at this moment. Now that the cat's out of the bag, you know about my problem. You know about the problems I have with controlling my powers. You must already be thinking up some strategies of how you can avoid to be put in such a dangerous situation again. Aren't you? Sure, I guess, Darren says, confused. But I don't see why... Then let me ask you directly, Melindra says. Are you, or are you not, planning to cast a spell on me that limits my powers? What? Darren says. No, of course not. What are you even saying? Do you know how risky it would be to try and cast a spell like that on you, given the nature of your Stillwater aura? You could even die from something like that. I would never dream of casting such a spell on you. You wouldn't? Melindra says, looking slightly taken aback. Listen, Darren says, I think I'm starting to understand why you never told us about your problem. And I don't blame you. We didn't exactly start off on the best of terms, and you had no reason to trust us, just as we didn't trust you. But for what it's worth, I think you made the right call. You should You should not risk joining any of our battles unless we have absolutely no other way of dealing with our enemies. Any other type of strategy would be too risky. I agree, Kate says. Even if she doesn't put us in any immediate danger, a slight scratch from one of her wind blades could be all it takes for the oath to be set off, and to kill her where she stands. As long as there isn't some other sage waiting around the corner, we should be able to handle any situation by ourselves, just as we've done in the past. Hiya-looking mousy, cough, lovely as always. Hope you're doing well. Pisa Magor, welcome in. Thank you very much. Do you like my costume? Although I hope I don't look mousy as always. Just mousy today. Thank you, thank you. She then turns to Melindra with a hesitant look in her eyes. And I'd like to say that I'm sorry for misinterpreting some of your intentions in the past few days. Kate says, I understand now that you were only trying to look out for yourself, and that you meant us no harm. Barry, what did you do to them? Melindra asks me, while looking somewhat terrified. They're not acting like themselves. Does your stat device have some sort of mind-affecting spell that I don't know of? They're just trying to be nice, Melindra, I say. There's no need to act so shocked about it. Also, could we move away from this camp? I have a feeling that we're gonna start getting attacked by 100 pinecone collecting underlings if we stay in this place any longer. Good thinking, Darren says. But what about the Sage and Master Noldorin? Maybe they're still lurking around here somewhere. Nah, they're both gone, Araka says. And so are the other allies that you were fighting earlier. If I'm not able to sense them, then they must have teleported to their real base. You know, the one that is not just an empty area with a stone table in the middle. Pinecone collecting underlings. There's a... Carrot King, there's this... They're in a tournament where they have objectives that they're supposed to be completing, and the first objective is they have to find a magic glowing pinecone and bring it to a specific city. And since people don't know which pinecones glow or how to make them glow, they're going for quantity over quality and just collecting all the pinecones that they can find and bringing them to someone who they think can make the pinecones glow, which is the Sage. So the Sage has agreed to allow everyone onto his team if they just bring him hundreds and hundreds of pinecones. Yeah, so pinecone collecting underlings who are just collecting a bunch of pinecones in hopes that one of them will glow. They've realized that only someone with like a lot of magical power can make them glow. I like that face. By the way, I really appreciate your emotes that you bring to this channel. They're very accurate. Good thinking, Darren says. But what about the Sage? Okay. You're probably right, Darren says. Come on, let's get going, and we'll talk more on the way. As we're walking away from the camp area, we notice that the mages who were collecting pinecones earlier are all gone. They must have run away when they saw the giant made out of stone. And who could blame them? It's not like you see that every day. So, just to make sure that we're all on the same page here, Melindra says while we're walking through the empty forest, you guys don't want to cast any sort of spells on me to fix my problem with controlling my powers. That's right, Darren says. And you want me to continue to avoid all of your battles just like before? Melindra asks. Exactly, Darren says. Okay, I'm going to be honest, Melindra says. This still sounds a little fishy to me, but I guess I'm going to have to trust your word for now. I mean, I did witness with my own eyes how Ayase took my side against the sage after all. Oh, you saw that, Kate says, looking a little flustered. Well, technically, I couldn't really turn my head back then, so I mostly only heard it happen. But yes, Melindra says, I almost thought that I was hallucinating there for a second. Of all the people that I would have expected to attack the sage first in that situation, Kate would have been the last on my mind. You just called me by my real name, Kate says, looking very surprised. I suppose I did, Icy, Melindra says with a slight smile. I suppose I did. So, which way are we headed? Darren says. We'll go straight for another few hours until we reach a small lake, Melindra says. We'll take a break there, and then I'll show you the rest of the way. Oh, this is new to me. Not long after we're done talking, I suddenly hear Rose's voice through the transceiver. As soon as I hear her, I immediately remember the last time when the Revenant contacted me, and how she asked me to keep the transceiver open so she could call me again. Barry, do you hear me? The Revenant says. I hear you, I tell her simply, after I tap the transceiver. Listen to me, the Revenant says. You need to take out your stat device and enter the secret code that boosts your hearing stat. Do you understand? What? I say. There's no time to explain, the Revenant says. Just do it. Quick. She then closes the channel again, and there is no more way for me to contact her. Activate the secret code. Don't activate the secret code. There is no reason not to activate the secret code. The secret code increases the hearing stat, so the worst thing that's going to happen is they hears nothing, or like the reason you wouldn't do what she says is because she might be an enemy, but the worst thing that could happen is you hear nothing. The best thing is you hear something important, or I guess the worst thing would be you hear something that hurts your feelings. Yeah, so if anyone wants to argue with me, it seems like y'all are on the same page. And this is new, because every playthrough I've done I saved Rose, so this is all new for me. I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm still gonna give you guys a moment just to let my voice rest. If anyone would like to argue with me. Lordos, welcome in. Go ahead. What's your argument? It is what you're good at, but in this case I don't think you'll be able to get much purchase for any argument. Let's argue about something. Well, Locke, I agree with you. People will argue in a news article about puppies being rescued. It's always something to argue about. Okay, so Lourdes, you've not successfully argued with me about about why I should not activate the secret code, so we're activating the secret code. Achievement unlocked. Stalker detected. Ooh. I decide to take out my device and activate the secret code that Melindra taught me a few days ago, just like my revenant asked. Once I'm done, I put my device back in my pocket and I continue to walk alongside the others. Was that the revenant again? Darren asks as he gets closer to me. What did she want? Just out of curiosity. It's, see? Yeah. The secret code has increased my hearing stat by 3 points. It's really cool that I'm able to see that. Wait, let's not. Pineapple does not belong on pizza. I like pineapple, I like grilled pineapple, and I like pizza, but pineapple does not belong on pizza. Yeah, secret code implies a superiority complex and would exclude others from activities and knowledge. Also shows that there's some type of elitist type-ish going on. I mean, you're not wrong. It's made by Lusathi. Lusathi are an elitist race that think they're better than everyone else. They intentionally kept a lot of stuff secret so that not everyone is able to access information. You've not said anything that is not true. Thank you for the hydrate. She wanted me to enter my secret code in the stat device so I can boost my hearing. I say. I didn't really see a reason why I shouldn't do it, so I did what she said. Huh, Darren says. Well, I sure hope that this isn't a trap of some sort. I don't think so, I say. I mean, this code just boosts my hearing for a short while. I don't really see what... As I was talking, I suddenly realized something that I hadn't noticed before. According to Melindra, the secret code should have only improved my hearing for a few seconds, but for some reason my hearing is even better than it was before. My hearing is still better than it was before I used the code. Did the Revenant use some sort of trick? What's the matter, Barry? Darren says. Why did you stop talking? The hearing stat, I say. It's still being boosted. It was supposed to go back to the original level after a few seconds, but for some reason that didn't happen. Lordos, when there is a smart or a good decision, I will make the decision for us. But I also give you guys, mostly to give myself a break, I will give you guys the option of trying to argue why Smart Good Barry would take the option that I'm deeming is not smart or good. So I was giving you the option of trying to convince me not to use the hearing stat. Also, what are you cosplaying as today? I mean, it's in the title, but Minnie Mouse, you can't tell? Stretch. You can actually? That was your guess? Well, I'm glad that you can tell. Instead of... Yeah, so far y'all have all just straight up agreed with me. I have a real life friend that will occasionally join for Magium, and he will go out of his way to just pick whatever I'm not. Like, whatever he thinks is the wrong option and whatever is not my choice. Where's Mickey? Well, Mickey, he's not here right now. It's just me. Mickey's on vacation? Yeah, Mickey went to go live out on a farm. Considering I started this as a genocide run, where it was a genocidal mini-mouse, he went to go live on a farm. Microphone is a temp for Mickey today. My hearing stat. It's ice. What's the matter, Barry? Darren says. Why did you stop talking? The hearing stat, I say. It's still being boosted. It was supposed to go back to its original level after a few seconds, but for some reason that didn't happen. Well, maybe your device is broken? Or something? Darren says. I don't know, I say. I feel like that would be too big of a coincidence. Suddenly, I hear Aluna talking with Araka at the back of our group. Araka, are there any mages in this area left except for us? Aluna says. Mages? Araka says. Oh yeah, there is one. It's the same guy that's been following us invisibly from a long distance. Since we were at our camp this morning. What? Aluna says. There's been someone following us since this morning. Why didn't you tell us about this? Well, it's not like he has any chance of defeating any of you, Araka says. Even the half-less Safi could probably beat him with his hands tied behind his back. I was curious to see what his deal was, so I let him be for a while. Araka's is also a planet from the movie Dune, one of your favorite movies to have come out recently. Anyone else can't wait for part 2, and Neapolitan with Joaquin Phoenix. I haven't seen it. You know, you are really starting to get on my nerves lately, Aluna says. That's not new for her. Just as Aluna is done talking, I notice the fact that the wind hasn't been blowing at all for a while. I'm also not hearing any sounds coming from outside of our group, and now that I look a little closer around me, I notice that there are a few insects floating in mid-air as if they've been frozen. Oh boy. I think I'm starting to understand what's going on here. Before I get to finish my train of thought, Hadrick is the one to hit the nail on the head as he poses a question to all of us. So, I've been wondering about something for a while. Maybe you guys can clear it up for me, Hadrick says. Does the time look frozen to anyone else? Or is it just me? Next chapter. Oh man. That was so fast. I don't want to end here. Do I start a new chapter? What do you guys want? Continue to start the chapter or end here? Are you guys hooked? This is the entire reason. The scene that's coming up is the entire reason that I allowed Rose to die, because I wanted to see what would happen. We're finally getting to the part that I was looking for. Depends on how much energy. Oh, I'm fine energy-wise. Thank you. I appreciate that. That was very thoughtful. Thank you. You're literally sitting on the hook? Wow, that sounds really uncomfortable. Let's see what we could do about that. Alright. Next chapter. Checkpoint reached, game saved. May update the title. You're right, Darren tells Hadrick after looking around himself for a few seconds. The time really is frozen. Could it be Eden's doing? Oh, you hold on to it. Ayo. It's not Eden, Araka says. If Eden were here, I would have told you about it, remember? Then who is it? Darren asks. Who froze time? Why don't you take a closer look and see for yourself? Araka says. She is coming out of the woods and heading your way as we speak. Still at 7. That's cool. She? Darren says. As we all take a look at the person who is now slowly approaching us, we recognize her immediately. Rose is currently walking very slowly towards us, while her eyes are shining with a bright yellow light. Her expression is completely blank as she looks straight ahead of her without acknowledging our presence. The Revenant again, Darren says with a cold look on his face. Come on, let's see what she wants. We all do as Darren says, and we head over to the Revenant until we are right in front of her. As soon as we reach her, the Revenant stops in her tracks and she continues to stare straight ahead with the same blank expression on her face. Why did you come here, Revenant? Darren asks her. And why did you freeze time? The Revenant does not react to Darren's words in any way. She doesn't seem to be aware of our presence. It's as if she were in some sort of trance. Keep trying to talk to her, grab her by the arms, and try to shake her out of the trance. For people who don't know who Rose and Revenant Rose is, Rose was a character in Book 1 who, she was a native of Varathia, the continent that they're on. She was really, really kind and really, really sweet. Was briefly in a relationship with the main character. They slept together. And then it ended up being that she was a time weaver, which means that, well, they actually have no idea what a time weaver is, except for their powers over time. When a follower of the god of death realized that she had powers over time, he did a sacrifice on himself, like a sacrificial spell, that killed himself and was also killed her and then brought her back as a revenant, which is a servant of the dead with all of the same powers that the body has. So it is a completely different entity, but she has the same appearance and all of the memories of Rose. But she is forced to follow the god of death and his whims. It sounds like before she left to go wherever she was supposed to go, she asked to make sure that her little brother and sister, who she cared for, were still taken care of. So, and now she's helped by making it so he has the hearing stat. So, although I have no idea how she knew about the hearing stat, but apparently somehow she did. Yeah, that's who Rose is. She's a dead person. Revi. I think in the Discord she's known as like Revenant Rose or Revi Rose. Okay, so I see one person says grab, three people say do not grab. Okay, so keep trying to talk to her. Are you listening to us? I say. Seeing that the Revenant is still not doing anything, I position myself right in front of her and I begin to snap my fingers repeatedly very close to her face. Come on, I say. Snap out of it. Oh no, Melindra says. I've seen something like this happen before. If it's what I think it is, then you guys had better ready yourselves up. The sage fright from earlier is going to feel like a walk in the park compared to what's coming next. They're going to be in for a treat, all right, Araka says, and then she laughs. What are you two talking about? Hadrick says. Ready ourselves for what? It's starting, Melindra says. All of a sudden, the Revenant disappears from before our eyes, and we can hear her voice coming from behind us. As we all turn around, we realize that it wasn't only her voice, but the Revenant herself who had switched positions in a fraction of a second. The voice that is coming out of her mouth barely sounds like that of Rose, due to the high amount of reverberation in it. A prophecy I have come to tell you, the Revenant says. I wish that this was a button. Here we go, Araka says. A prophecy of things that may come to pass, but which have not yet been set in stone, the Revenant continues. Listen carefully to the events that will be foretold, and you may be able to prevent them from happening before it is too late. The Revenant then disappears again, and she reappears on our left side, preparing to speak again as the echo in her voice gets more and more intense, in order to signify the beginning of the prophecy. After each line that she speaks, the Revenant disappears and appears in a different place, making us all turn our heads in confusion. As two old enemies clash one final time, a great disaster that has once been avoided can no longer be prevented in the same way. An entire continent lies in ruins, while a single laugh made from different voices echoes loudly throughout the realm. As soon as the Revenant is done delivering the prophecy, she stops moving, and once again she begins to stare into space with a blank expression on her face. A prophecy about a great disaster. Two old enemies. Does this mean we were right? The calamity that Eden warned us about will happen when he clashes with Tyrath? But then again, the prophecy also mentioned a laugh made up from different voices, and I only know one person who could fit this description. Araka, I say. This prophecy was oddly specific about that single laugh made up from different voices thing. You wouldn't happen to know anything about this great disaster, would you? Hey, I would make that prophecy happen in less than a day. Hey, I could make that prophecy happen in less than a day if you want, Araka says. That way, you wouldn't have to waste any more time trying to figure it out. All you have to do is let me out of this amulet. What do you say? I think I'd rather figure it out by myself, if you don't mind. Your loss, Araka says. So, is this it? Darren says. Is the prophecy over? If you're asking about the prophecy, then yes, it is over, Melindra says. You're saying that we should be expecting something else right after the prophecy. Darren says, only if everything happens in the same way that it did 600 years ago. Melindra says, the last time I had the honor of witnessing a Time Weaver's prophecy, I didn't have to wait long until... Melindra interrupts herself because we can all suddenly feel an immense amount of pressure in the air, making it hard to breathe, while the sky looks like it's trembling under the sheer force of the magical power that has flooded our entire area. As we slowly adapt to the pressure and begin to breathe more normally, the Revenant is getting raised higher and higher into the air, while her eyes are still bright yellow, staring into nothingness. What the hell? Hadrick shouts. What the hell is this crazy amount of magical power? Araka is still in the amulet, isn't she? Araka laughs from inside her amulet. Y'all have requested that I do the laugh. Make up for my lack of ability in fake laughter with the echo effect. This is not Araka's doing, Melindra says as she struggles to remain calm. I already told you. That sage from earlier will seem like nothing compared to what is about to happen. She is right. I don't think I've experienced such a feeling of dread ever since I saw Araka get out of her amulet. It's like every single fiber of my being is telling me to run the hell away from here, as far as possible and as fast as my feet can carry me. I don't let this fear overcome me. Not now. I can't let this fear overcome me, not now. I'm almost certain that even the smallest wrong decision made at this point could lead to my instant obliteration. Just who is it exactly that we are facing here? Greetings, mortals. We hear several male voices speaking in unison all around us. How should I do this dude's voice? Greetings, mortals. We hear several male voices speaking in unison around us. This speech pattern is very similar to the way in which Araka speaks sometimes when she loses control over her voice. A laugh made up from several different voices. Could this be tied to the prophecy as well? You have been blessed by the presence of a god, the voices say, as they reverberate throughout the entire area. Kneel before me, and I will then give you the permission to gaze upon my magnificent form in admiration. And just too exactly, Darren starts to say, but Melindra puts her hand over his mouth to silence him with a panicked look on her face. This is the god of time, Melindra says. Don't ask him any questions. He has the power to end us all in a matter of seconds. Just kneel. She then kneels before the god of time with her head bowed down while she signals Darren to do the same. An adversary that can make someone as proud as Melindra act this way? I don't like where this is going. Clearly, if I mess around here, I could end up getting everyone killed. But should I really kneel before this bastard? While I was standing there considering my options, the god of time was slowly materializing into a more earthly form. Although I'm not sure if I could really call it that. His body is the form and the size of a human, but it is made out of a sort of solid blue light, which is simply radiating magical energy. The man has no face and no distinguishable features aside from a few small blue flames that keep appearing and disappearing randomly throughout his body. At random short time intervals, that keep appearing and disappearing randomly throughout his body. At random short time intervals, the man has no face and no distinguishable features aside from a few small blue flames that keep appearing and disappearing randomly throughout his body at random short time intervals. He is currently floating in mid-air next to the Revenant, and he is looking straight at us with his empty face. It is not wise to keep a god waiting. The god of time says, I told you to kneel. Don't listen to what he says, Araka tells us. He needs you alive for his plan to work. He can't do anything to you. He is just bluffing. Kneel before the god of time, stand my ground, and insult the god of time. Okay. What I picked was this one, but Smartberry wouldn't do this one, so this one is off the table. Y'all can argue with me. Good Smartberry would not do this one. I feel like good Smartberry could do either of these. So, it's up to y'all. Y'all have about a minute. We do not kneel. We'll go with whatever the majority chooses. I feel like Smartberry would kneel before him. But I don't want to kneel before him. But I feel like Smartberry would. Smartberry would. Okay. I see one person who said don't kneel and one person who said do kneel. We did lose some voters. That's okay though. People can sleep if they want. Since it's tied... Oh, okay. So we're gonna kneel before the god of time. Don't worry, you'll have more opportunities. You could also save here if you'd like. So we could come back. Despite what Araka said, I decide not to risk everyone's safety for the sake of my pride, and I kneel before the god of time, just like Melindra. If you want to see me kneeling, then I hope you've brought a chair, Darren tells the god of time, because you're going to be waiting for a while. Just as Darren has done talking, we see his heart being ripped straight out of his chest and right through his plate armor by an invisible force, as blood begins to spatter all around him. Oh. Did Darren just die, LMAO? Wow. Love the sympathy. I can tell you really care about him. We see his heart being ripped straight out of his chest and right through his plate armor by an invisible force, as blood begins to spatter all out of him. Oh no, Hadrick says, as the rest of us watch Darren, too shocked to speak. When Darren is almost about to fall to the ground, I hear Hadrick starting to talk in reverse, and then I see Darren's heart going back inside his chest by itself, while all of the blood on the ground and on his armor gets cleaned up instantly. As soon as the time reversal spell is over, Darren begins to breathe very loudly and rapidly, while sweating all over, as if he'd just woken up from a terrible nightmare. Araka laughs when she sees the look on his face. I guess I forgot that he can also reverse time as long as he has control over the Time Weaver. Araka says, my bad. I will not repeat myself again. The God of Time says, Neo. Kate and the others exchange a few hesitant looks, but it doesn't seem as if any of them are planning to follow the god's orders, even after his previous display of power. Sorry, Hadrick says with a half grin, while trying to mimic his usual confident tone. My doctor told me that kneeling is bad for my— I said kneel! The god shouts, and then an immense amount of pressure pushes us all to the ground, including Melindra and me, who were already kneeling. We are now being squashed against the rocky soil by an incredible force, and I can already feel the pain from my internal organs bleeding, as the enormous pressure above us just keeps getting more and more unbearable. In order to make sure that he doesn't kill us, the god of time— I think my hair keeps getting caught in, like, the makeup on my nose. It's so itchy. In order to make sure that he doesn't kill us, the God of Time keeps casting time reversal spells every 10 seconds or so, thus healing our internal organs just so they can be reformed again and again over the course of the next few minutes. During this time, I can't manage to pay attention to anything around me. Every ounce of my energy is being focused into withstanding the pain. I can no longer tell if the screams that I'm hearing are coming from me or from my friends. It's as if I voluntarily entered some sort of trance, trying to become one with the pain, trying to let it flow through me. No matter how hard I try, however, the pain keeps getting the better of me, and then I need to regain my focus all over again. Can you stop with the time reversal spell already? Araka says, exasperated after a while. You're making me dizzy. Is this really the God of Time or a punk with the time turner? Not a punk with the time turner, but he is a punk with the time weaver. Sort of. He is a very, 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 very powerful spell, or powerful spirit from the magical plane who has taken upon the mantle of God of Time. Meaning that he is able to gather— this is all explained in a little bit. He's able to gather power from the mortal plane of people if mortals worship him or if other things happen. But doesn't really have more or less power over time. That's just sort of like he specializes in time magic. But even still, in order to have the amount of control over time that he has right now, he needs to tap into the power of the Time Weaver that is currently present. Upon hearing Areka's words, the god of time casts one last time reversal spell, and then he lowers the amount of pressure in the air above us, making sure that he is no longer hurting us, but still keeping us pressed to the ground. Calm, hello! Welcome in, how are you doing? You're gonna try your own Minnie Mouse? You better. You promised. You just committed to it. You now need to do Minnie Mouse. Bet. You're gonna do a much better Minnie Mouse than me, but it's worth it. It's gonna be worth it to see you. Commitment, nay! How are you doing? Welcome in. Do you like the Minnie Mouse costume? I've committed to wearing gloves this entire stream. They're very annoying, because I don't like wearing gloves. But I've committed? Yeah. You're doing well, I'm glad to hear that. Well, thank you for stopping by. It's really good to see you. I am feeling proud, thank you. I am very grateful to stream, to Twitch in general, for giving me an excuse to come up with cosplays. So, thank you, Twitch. Thank you, everyone. Otherwise, I've been thinking about getting this, making this cosplay since I got these overalls and belt years ago. But there was no reason for me to make it until Twitch. Okay. Thank you, Areka says in the same exasperated tone. I see. This dude's voice is complicated. I see that living among these mortals has taught you some long overdue basic etiquette, Areka, the god of time says. It is regrettable that you do not learn these manners, that you could not learn these manners before we were forced to banish you from our realm. Forced, Areka says. Ha! You only did it because you were afraid of me. It's funny because while we were both living on the magical plane, I hadn't pegged you as the cowardly type. And yet, twice you ran from me. Once with the banishment, and a second time 600 years ago. What exactly did happen to that unfinished duel of ours, eh? Didn't you say that we would settle our scores eventually? And we will, the god of time says, as soon as we both are back to our peak conditions. You wouldn't want to fight me from inside an amulet, would you? You be quiet and listen whilst you work? Well, enjoy listening and enjoy work. Good job. Proud of you for being responsible. Well, if you could just destroy this amulet for me, we could, Areka starts to say, but she is interrupted by the god of time. You will receive no help from me, the god of time says. Don't think that I've forgotten about the many spirits you killed and absorbed all those thousands of years ago. Some of them were my friends, you know. Don't be like that, Salcrum, Areka says with a mocking tone. We're friends too, aren't we? After all, it's thanks to me that you found out you could absorb other spirits. Don't think that I didn't figure out what you've been doing. You might have managed to hide this from all the other spirits in the magical plane, but I'm the one who invented the technique. I know all about its side effects. Your voice started to change right after we had our first battle in the magical plane. The same thing happened to Ulrich. Those different voices that you're using when you speak are from all the other spirits that you couldn't absorb properly, aren't they? The same thing happened to me at first, but then I learned and I adapted, unlike you, idiots. Seriously, did you think you and... What? Seriously, what did you and Ulrich think? That you could just copy my technique without any sort of training? Just how arrogant could you be, anyways? Do you have any idea how much time I spent perfecting that spell? But hey, I guess it was easier for you to assume that only female spirits from the civilized races could absorb other spirits correctly, and to convince everyone to banish us to the earthen plane, than to admit that the only reason for your failure was your outstanding ineptitude. I will not stand here to listen to you mocking, the god of time starts to say, but Arak cuts him off. Hey, you both should have listened to Memphir, Araka says. He is the only one with a brain out of all of you gods. I bet he tried to stop you from absorbing the spirits, didn't he? I've never heard him use different voices when he spoke. How is Memphir, by the way? Isn't the time limit for his own prophecy due at some point during this century? The god of fate and his prophecy are none of your business, the god of time starts to say, but he gets cut off yet again. Yeah, it was this century, wasn't it? Araka says, as she is now ignoring the god of time completely while getting lost in her own thoughts. And the prophecy was pretty specific about his death, too. It said that he would get killed by a member of the civilized races from the earthen plane, who would originate from a region called Varathia. I remember. Ooh. I'm just realizing something now. I remember how Memphir kept rechecking that prophecy again and again in hopes that something would change, even if he always got the exact same result. He was becoming completely obsessed with it. I bet he must have really freaked out when Eden named this continent Varathia. Huh. And now that the time limit is drawing closer, the so-called God of Fate even went as far as forming a temporary alliance with the God of Death, saying that he'd help him with his indiscriminate murders as long as they were being focused on Varathia. I honestly don't get what's going through Memphir's head. If I were in his place, I'd just reduce this entire continent to a pile of ashes in one day, and be done with it. The god of fate is aiming to destroy this continent too? Just how could the situation get any worse? Araka, if you don't keep quiet, I'm going to... Selkram, the god of time, says, You're going to what? Araka says in a provocative tone. Destroy my amulet. I could also throw you very far from here, in the middle of an ocean where no one will ever find you again, the god says. I'd like to see you try, Araka says. Don't listen to her provocations, Aluna says, as she is struggling to articulate her words while she is still being pushed face first against the ground. "If you throw her in an ocean, she will just escape from her amulet by herself, and then it will be the end for all of us." "Oh," the god of time says, "so you're just her captor then? Or maybe just her jailer? I suppose this is only fitting for a banshee to be the one overseeing such a task, given how much your kind has had to suffer because of her arrogance." "And because of yours," Flower shouts all of a sudden. "It's your fault that Petal has to live like this. She never wanted this life. She never wanted to kill anyone. And neither did any of the other banshees. I will never forgive you for what you've done." "You will never forgive me?" the god of time says, sounding genuinely puzzled. "You must have a very short memory if you can afford to talk to me like this after all that has happened. Allow me to refresh that short memory of yours a little." He then begins to increase the pressure that was pushing Flower against the ground until she starts screaming in pain. After a few more seconds, the god of time reverses time once again to make sure that he doesn't kill her by accident, and he continues to squash her over and over again like before. "Oh no," Araka says. "Not the time reversals again. Just kill me and put me out of my misery." Try to get the god of time's attention so he'll focus on me instead of Flower. Leave the god of time alone. He will surely stop by himself eventually. I feel like Good Berry would do this one. I'm giving y'all about a minute. Alright, so it looks like a unanimous get his attention. Glad we're all on the same page. "Is this really how a god should act?" I say, as I try hard to turn my face towards the god of time while I'm still being pushed against the ground. "Picking on little girls? Do they not have the concept of honor in the magical plane? Or at least dignity?" "You've got more chances, Azafel, don't worry." The god reverses time once again in order to heal Flower, and then he floats all the way to my position so he can get a better look at me. Or at least I think that's what he's trying to do, since he doesn't really have a face. How curious, the god of time says. "You seem to be very weak, even by mortal standards. I can sense almost no magic in your aura, and yet you still try to defy me. Why is that?" "You can't use reason to understand that one's motivations," Areka says. "He even tried to attack me with a dagger once, when I was at full power. I think his survival instincts are defective, or something. He's just a weakling anyway, so who cares?" "It's not just him who is surprisingly weak, however," Selkram says as he flies to a higher position in order to have a better look at all of us. "Neither of the people in this group, except for the Stillwater girl, can even begin to compare with the ones from 600 years ago in terms of magical power. Last time there was the Golden Fox. There was the Stillwater girl. There was... Neither of the people in this group, except for the Stillwater girl, can even begin to compare to the ones from 600 years ago in terms of magical power. Last time, there was the Golden Fox, there was the Stillwater you were infused with, there was that really strong Stillwater who was traveling with the Fox. Eden, I believe was his name. Compared to what we have here, it all seems like a cruel joke. Why even bother to send the Time Weaver to any of these people? They will probably just get killed off within the next couple of days, if they are lucky enough to even survive that long. What are you talking about? I say, as I'm having a little trouble speaking properly due to my face being constantly pushed into the dirt. Aren't you the one who sent the Time Weaver here? Huh. Eureka says, Selkram wishes he could just control Time Weavers whenever he wants. The Magium is the one who sent the Time Weaver here. Not this sad excuse for a god. The Magium? I say, too shocked to be able to do anything other than repeat her words. Eureka says, it is somewhat of a tradition for the Magium to send a Time Weaver on the earthen plane every time there is the potential for a great number of lives to be lost in a short period of time. Especially when it comes to this continent. When the Time Weaver's powers finally awaken, the person who was gifted with these powers will enter some kind of trance. They will freeze time, and then they will walk patiently towards several groups of people, delivering the prophecy to them one by one. That is how it's always been. But then, what does the God of Time have to do with all of this? I ask. Oh, Selkram is just hijacking the signal, so to speak, Eureka says. He found a way, long ago, to take advantage of a Time Weaver's trance to temporarily link himself directly to the Magium, and he is using this connection to insert a ritual of his own into the mix. You know how other gods get their power through large numbers of followers. Well, Selkram doesn't have any followers. He's going for quality over quantity. Basically, since the group visited by the Time Weavers have the potential to affect the lives of hundreds of thousands of people, he decided to channel all of his efforts into exploiting people like you, instead of begging for the adoration of a bunch of sheep like all the other gods are doing. What kind of ritual are you talking about? I ask Eureka, a little apprehensively. Well, I don't know all the details, Eureka says, since these rituals of his always change, but there should almost certainly be some time traveling involved in at least one of the stages. When's the ritual starting anyway? As soon as every preparation is in place, the God of Time says, but this does not mean that you should be spending the remaining time holding conversations with these lowly creatures. Why do you bother answering every single one of their questions? I very much doubt that these people will even make it past the first stage of the ritual. Eureka laughs. I think you will be very surprised with their upcoming performance, she says. These aren't the types to give up easily. We'll see about that soon enough, the God of Time says. He then flies over to the Revenant's position, and he grabs her by the chin while turning her head left and right a few times, while bringing her... He then flies over to the Revenant's position, and he grabs her by the chin, turning her head left and right a few times while bringing his face closer to hers. The God of Time says. I sense traces of the God of Death's aura coming from this Time Weaver. A Revenant, perhaps, or maybe some other form of undead. Well, whatever she is, she just managed to earn an invitation to my ritual. Let me just pull her out of her trance. After he stops talking, the God of Time releases the Revenant from his grasp, and then he waves his hand in front of her face, which causes the bright light to fade from her eyes. After she regains her senses, the Revenant looks around her with calm, emotionless gaze, and then she addresses the God of Time directly. I see that you have removed me from my trance, the Revenant says. Should I take it that you're going to force me to participate in your ritual? How very astute of you, the God of Time says. It seems that Ulrich has instructed you well. There was no need for him to instruct me, the Revenant says. The spell that brought me into this world implanted me with a lot of the God of Death's knowledge into my mind, including the details about your rituals and about your personality. Taking these factors into account, it wasn't hard for me to predict that your first reaction when finding out about me would be to try and punish the God of Death for meddling in your affairs. And what better way to punish him than through me, his loyal follower? At long last, Ulrich has found himself a follower that can compensate for his lack of wits, the God of Time says. But let's see how far your wits can carry you in the trials ahead. The ritual is about to begin. Prepare yourself. He pauses. Oh, and just to be perfectly clear, the God of Time says in a louder voice, the ritual will be affecting all of the people in this general area who are not currently frozen in time. This also includes those that may be hiding behind an invisibility spell, watching us from a distance. Ha! Areka said. I knew it. Let the ritual commence, the god says, and then a blinding white light fills our entire area, making it impossible to see any further than my own hands. Shit's going down. I don't like talking. I need to come up with an easier voice for him, because that's hurting my throat. I then get a strong dizziness sensation, while it feels as if my mind is being pulled straight out of my body. As soon as the light disappears, I can see around me again. As soon as the light disappears and I can see around me again, I notice that I am still lying on the ground, but everyone else is gone. Wait, no, that isn't right. It's not that everyone else is gone, it's that I've been transported to an entirely different place. I'm still in the middle of a forest somewhere, but this forest seems awfully familiar, as if I've been here before in my distant past. I then decide to get up and explore a bit. I am momentarily frozen in shock as I realize that my height is now considerably lower than it was before. And it's not only my height that's different either. My arms are also much shorter than my hands. My arms are also much shorter, my hands are smaller, and I'm no longer wearing the same clothes. No. Oh. These rituals are always these rituals of his are always changing. These rituals of his always change, but there should almost certainly be some time traveling involved. I hear Araka's voice in the back of my head as I suddenly remember what she was saying to me earlier. Time traveling. A smaller body and a familiar-looking forest. I'm getting a bad feeling about this. I immediately check my pockets to see if I still have any of my old items, but they are all gone, including my stat device. If this is really the forest I think it is, and if that strong magical aura I'm feeling in the distance also belongs to whom I think it does, then the god of time must have sent me back to when I was about 13 years of age. But for what purpose? I throw all of those thoughts away, and I start running as fast as I can towards the house. Towards the house that I once used to call my... I throw all of those thoughts away, and I start running as fast as I can towards the house that I once used to call my home. I say that I'm running towards my house, but truth be told, my home used to be more of a cabin, really. It was made almost entirely of wood, and it was somewhat isolated from the rest of the village because my father liked the quiet. We had a river close to us, and we could get all of the firewood we needed from this forest, so we were somewhat independent from the other townfolk. We even had a small patch of land that we were farming, and a barn where we kept our hay. It's funny how I can still remember all of these details so vividly, when I haven't thought about this place in many years. As soon as I reach the edge of the forest, I take a look towards the old cabin, and my heart skips a beat when I see my little sister in the middle of our yard, just as the banshee within her is awakening and preparing to take over her body. That powerful magical aura radiating from her is just as sinister as I remembered, and it's sending shivers down my spine. Not only is my sister's aura changing, but her body is also transforming into something that could no longer be called human. Her face looks like it's melting, and her skin is turning purple, while the rest of her body is getting slowly deformed. As the donkey in front of our barn is making loud and scared noises, my parents and my little brother are just coming back to the house, and they're rushing toward the yard to see what is happening to my sister. They're still alive. My parents are still alive. This time I didn't arrive too late. I can still save them. I can make things right. I can... Wait. What about that trial the god of time was talking about? Is saving my parents part of the trial, or am I supposed to do something else? No. To hell with that trial. I'm being offered a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to fix my past mistakes. I'm not going to throw it away. This time I won't be too late. This time I'm going to save them all. Attack the banshee right now while she is still in the process of awakening. Wait for the banshee to attack my parents before going for the kill. It's up to y'all. Y'all have about a minute. For the people who need context, Barry's parents were killed by a banshee that inhabited his little sister. And he was able to kill the banshee after they killed the parents because she was still weak since she just awoke. Well, I mean, sort of. Yeah, she's still in. The Banshee is in the sister's body right now. But the sister is still. Well, since she's in the process of awakening, the sister might not be dead yet, but she's about to be in a couple of seconds. I couldn't ask for a better moment to attack the Banshee. With her awakening still ongoing, she should be too busy to pay attention to anything else around her. Now is the time to strike. I quickly rush inside our barn while the donkey is still hee-hawing, and I grab the pitchfork that was lying on the ground. Do I really want to kill the Banshee, though? It's not really her fault that she's forced to kill other people in order to continue living. Maybe if I try to reason with her... No. Remember that laugh. Remember that sinister laughter that still sometimes haunts me in my dreams after so many years have passed. This Banshee killed my parents in cold blood, and she enjoyed it. She is not like Aluna. You can't reason with her. It's either kill or be killed. As I am approaching the Banshee, I see that my parents and my brother have already reached her, and they are trying to talk with her as if she were still my sister. Flowey? Claire, my mother says, dear gods, what happened to you? We need to call a doctor, my father says in a panicked voice. Or a magician? The kind that Barry is always talking about. A mage. That's what they're called. This looks like some sort of magical illness. If we can find a mage doctor, maybe we can... Step aside, father, I tell him as I get closer to them with my pitchfork still in my hands. Barry, my father says, what are you doing with that pitchfork? Your sister is very ill. We need to get her to a doctor. What she has is not curable, I tell him. I need to kill her before she kills us all. Barry, what are you saying? My mother says, shocked. There has to be a way to save her. You can't just kill her like this. She is your sister. What you see is no longer my sister, I say. She is a banshee. Let me pass. I don't care what she is, my father says, with a determined look on his face as he places himself between me and the banshee. I'm not letting you harm my little girl. There's no time to be having this argument, I say. We need to kill her quick before she... Oh shit, I didn't realize you could die here. I totally forgot. Shit. I don't get to... We need to kill her quick before she... I don't get to finish my sentence because the banshee has just completed her awakening, and she made full use of our distraction to run her hand through my father's chest from behind, impaling him as if she'd used a spear. No! I shout as my father falls to the ground, gurgling blood. I then tried to dash towards the banshee with my pitchfork, but she was waiting for me. All she needed to do was conjure a sharp lance made of stone out of thin air, and she sent it flying straight through my skull, killing me before I even had the chance to reach her. Alright, let's catch up. Alright, so wait for the banshee to attack my parents before going for the kill. I quickly rush inside our barn while the donkey is still hee-hawing, and I grab... okay. Claire, my mother says, dear gods, what happened to you? We need to call a doctor, my father says in a panicked voice. Or a magician, the kind that Barry is always talking about. A mage, that's what they're called. This looks like some sort of magical illness. If we can find a mage doctor, maybe we can cure her. There has to be a mage in one of the neighboring villages. Barry, there you are. Come quick, your sister is very ill. Do you know of any mage doctors in our area? There are no white mages in any of the villages around our area, I tell him as I slowly approach with the pitchfork in my hand. And even if there were, it would be too late for her. What are you saying? My father says. And what are you doing with that pitchfork? Never mind the pitchfork, I say. Don't take your eyes off Claire. In a matter of seconds, she's going to turn into a monster, and she won't hesitate to attack you. Claire? A monster? My father says as he turns towards her apprehensively. No, that can't be what's really happening. You are joking, aren't you, Barry? Don't take your eyes off her, I tell him again with a serious tone in my voice. If she tries to kill you, I won't hold back against her. Just as I was done talking, the banshee was already finished with her awakening, and she was preparing for her first strike. I quickly pushed my father out of the way with one hand. And with the other, I keep hold of my pitchfork. The banshee was trying to impale my father with her bare hand, but due to my intervention, she only managed to lightly wound me. In the left side of my abdomen instead. King Castrux Gaming, welcome in. Thank you for the first time chat, and I'm glad that you liked my reading. Thank you very much. It means a lot. Thank you. My mother gasps as she sees the blood dripping out of me. Barry! She shouts with fear in her voice. I do not give the banshee the time to attack me again, and I run my pitchfork straight through her chest while holding the weapon with both of my hands. The banshee screams in a loud and shrieky voice, but she doesn't manage to muster the strength for another strike, and after a few more seconds, her screams and her squirming all come to an end, along with her life. You were having your wife teach you to read? I mean, you're typing pretty well. Seems like you're doing okay. And thank you. Thank you. It was a sub-goal reward. So thank you guys. As I drop the pitchfork from my hand along with the banshee's body, my mother comes to hug me tightly, and then she holds me in her arms for a few seconds without saying anything. Thank you, my mother says. Thank you so much for saving him. I can't even imagine how it would have been to lose both my daughter and my husband in the same day. She then retracts all of a sudden, and she takes a look at my wound. I'm sorry, she says. I shouldn't have been pressing on your wounds like that. I'll go get some bandages and some rubbing alcohol from the house. It looks like it's only a surface level wound, so it should be enough to clean it up a little. I'll be right back. She then rushes towards the house as my father is still apparently in a state of shock from from what happened, and my brother is crying in the background. Oh, you can read, you're just being... Okay. Maybe you definitely prefer being read too. It's a vibe. Yeah, being read to is very relaxing, and people say they like my voice, so that's why I started doing this. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I did it. I actually did it. I changed the past. Even if I have to live my life all over again until I reach the age of 28, it will still all have been worth it. Even with magic, I couldn't have dared to dream that such a thing would be possible. Now, as long as I figure out what the God of Time's ritual is and how to survive it, I should be able to... My thought process suddenly gets interrupted by an extreme dizziness as the entire arena gets flooded with a bright white light again. Just like before, I get the sensation that my consciousness is being ripped out of my body, and then the light fades away as I find myself in the middle of a much too familiar forest. No, it can't be. I quickly look down to confirm that I am in the same 13-year-old body, and then I start to run towards my house as fast as I can. I don't know why I'm running. My magical sense is enough to give me all the information I need. The aura of the banshee possessing my sister is just as strong as it was the first time I was sent back in time. I can also sense that my parents and my little brother have not reached our house yet. I can sense it all. So why am I running? As soon as I reach the edge of the forest and look towards our house, I see my sister turning into a banshee, just like before. Everything I did was for nothing. It's going to happen again, and I'm the only one who can stop it from happening. Try to save my parents again. Let my parents die. What do y'all want to do? Y'all have about a minute. I'm inclined to do let the parents die again, just because, information gathering. Oh yeah, save parents again, that's what I meant. Oba Sarangha, or Sarange, welcome in, how you doing? Alright, try to save the parents again. Achievement unlocked, a hidden truth. As I run as fast as I can towards the barn, I grab the pitchfork from the ground, just like last time. Without even thinking, I make a sprint towards the banshee. And before my parents and brother can reach her, I impale her through the chest. This has to be it. I did everything perfectly this time around. I didn't get wounded, I didn't interact with either of my parents, and I killed the banshee before she even had the chance to complete her awakening. This has to be what the ritual wants for me, right? Otherwise, why would it have sent me here? Barry, my mother says, with tears in her eyes, what have you done? As I look at the ground to see the corpse of the banshee I killed, I notice, to my shock, that her body has reverted to the original form that my sister had before the awakening began. As my mother grabs the lifeless corpse of my sister tightly in her arms, my father is looking at me with nothing but contempt in his eyes, as a silent fury is slowly taking over him. You killed her, my father says. You killed her in cold blood, you little bastard. Is this how you repay us for taking you in? For treating you as if you were our own son? Jonathan, that's enough. my mother says, with a sudden panicked look in her eyes. No, Helen, my father says, with the same dark look on his face as before, while he's not letting me out of his sight. The boy needs to know. I want him to know. Barry, I want you to remember what I'm about to tell you for every single day that you'll be spending rotting away in prison. You are not our son. You never were. Your real parents were a couple of outsiders who moved into a remote village less than a year before you were born. They were both murdered in broad daylight a few years later by some hooded thugs that somehow managed to then vanish without a trace. And since there was no one left to care for you, Helen and I decided to take you in. But we only did it out of pity because nobody else wanted you. Do you understand? Nobody wanted you. Nobody wanted... The last words of my father's sentence were completely drowned out by the sound of my mother slapping him very hard across the face. I said that's enough, my mother said, as she looks at him with a determined look on her face, while she wipes a tear from her eyes. She then heads towards me, and she puts her hands on my shoulders as she looks me straight in the eyes. Barry, I'm really sorry about what your father said, my mother tells me while she's still trying to hold back her tears from before. I'm sure he didn't mean to say all of those terrible things. It must have been the shock of what happened that made him lose his temper. It's not true that we didn't want you. We've always loved you, even if you weren't our real son. She then pauses for a second to wipe the tears forming in her eyes with her sleeve. And regarding your sister, my mother continues, I can't bring myself to believe that you would kill her without a reason. We could all feel that powerful and unnatural magical aura coming from your sister just minutes ago, and we could see from a distance what a monstrous form she'd taken before you killed her. I don't know anything about magic, and neither does your father, but you were always fascinated by it, and always took every opportunity you had to learn more about it. If that thing your sister was turning into was dangerous enough that you had to kill her, I'm willing to trust your word on it, no matter how painful it will be for me to accept it. But you have to give me your word. You have to swear to me that there was no other way. Barry, can you swear this to me? Yes, I swear, I say. There is no way I would have... It's no use. I can't talk anymore. The dizziness is overwhelming me yet again, and I can feel myself being pulled out of my body while the bright light blinds me just like the last 2 times. Once the dizziness and the light are both gone, I find myself in the exact same spot that I am now all too familiar with, while my sister's aura can clearly be felt beyond the edge of the forest, as strong as ever. Keep trying to save my parents, let my parents die. What do you guys want to do? I feel like Smartberry would realize at this point that there might be a different goal. But also, he's pretty fucking emotional right now, so that curse word felt unnecessary. I apologize. Okay, one more time. Whatever Carrot picks. No, I can't let it end like this. Not when I'm so close to saving them. Even after all my father just said to me, I still can't bring myself to hate him. He saw me brutally murder his little girl in front of his eyes, after all. And my mother was willing to trust me even under these conditions. I can't give up on them just like this. I'm going to find a way to save them no matter what happens. I spend the next hour or so trying to figure out what could be going wrong with what I was doing. I tried everything I could think of. I killed the Banshee with different weapons. I killed her before and after my parents intervened. I tried to reason with the Banshee before killing her. I even got my father to kill her by himself one time. All for nothing. Every single time, when it seemed like it would finally work, I would just get sent back in time again, and I would have to start over from scratch. I almost died a few times as well. I'm not sure how this ritual would work if I died, but given how little interest the God of Time seemed to show in our lives, I would not be surprised if I would simply stay dead without any sort of time reversal to save me. As I stand there and try to decide upon my next course of action, a dark thought suddenly crosses my mind regarding a scenario that I've completely avoided taking into consideration up until this moment. What if this ritual isn't about me saving my parents? What if the only reason why the God of Time sent me here was to force me to relive my past mistakes and show me how powerless I am to change them? Araka did mention that these rituals are meant to exploit us for the God's own benefit, and after all the God of Time has done to us, it just wouldn't make sense for him to help us change our past out of the kindness of his heart. The more I think about it, the more it makes sense. It's not like God of Time is an actual god. He didn't create time. He doesn't have any control over it. The only way to undo something that has already happened is through a time reversal spell. If my parents' deaths have not been undone through magic, then my presence here is irrelevant. I will just be forced to repeat the same events over and over until I take the exact same actions I took when I was 13 years of age. There was never any other option. I was a fool to think otherwise. I slowly begin to advance towards my old house while I am trying hard to maintain my calm. There is no other way. I only need to get through this one more time, and then it will be over. As I walk through the forest, I make sure that I don't arrive at the cabin too early, so that I am not spotted by my parents or by the Banshee. I need to do everything just like I did 15 years ago. I need to arrive late. When I reach the edge of the forest, I can hear the screams of my parents as they are being murdered one by one by my sister. There is nothing I can do to help them. I need to stay strong. As soon as I stop hearing the voices, I rush out of the forest as fast as I can and into the barn to grab the pitchfork. My brother is now running away from the Banshee, just like I remembered he did. All those years ago. While she is busy chasing my brother, the Banshee is an easy target. I quickly circle around her, and I run the pitchfork through her stomach from behind. The Banshee tries to turn around to attack me, but she's too weakened due to her awakening. Eventually, she stops moving, and she drops to the ground as I let go of my pitchfork, so it can fall along with her. As I look towards my parents' corpses, trying to lying close to the banshee, I cannot help but feel a sharp pain in my chest, around my heart, although it passes soon afterwards. This is the second time I've failed to save them. No, I can't think like this. My parents were already dead. This is no different from a dream, a terrible dream that is now finally over. A bright light suddenly engulfs me, and my consciousness is yet again being transferred to a different body. When the light and dizziness fade away, I once more find myself in the same forest, while my sister's aura can be felt very clearly in the distance. No. How can this be? I didn't do anything different from 15 years ago. I let both my parents die. I saved my brother. I used the same pitchfork. I even made sure to arrive too late, so there wouldn't be any doubt that I did exactly. No. That's not right. That's not at all what happened. That's just the story that I've been telling everyone for the past 15 years. I've been telling it for so long that I've even managed to fool myself into believing it was real. But the reality of these events was in fact far different from what I remembered. Now I understand what this ritual wants from me. Now I finally get what I need to do. As the realization of what really happened all those years ago finally dawns upon me, I first experience a feeling of shock, then a feeling of resignation, and finally, a feeling of hatred. A feeling of pure hatred towards the god of time, which only keeps intensifying as I walk through the forest. When I finally reach the edge of the woods, I go inside the barn to pick up the pitchfork, and then I head towards my parents, who are now trying in vain to talk with the sister, or trying in vain to talk with the being that was once my sister. I position myself at a safe distance from my parents, and I wait. After a few more seconds, the banshee finally awakens, and she tries to impale my father with her bare hand. Amazingly, my father manages to dodge her first attack, so the banshee attacks him a second time by driving a large cone of rock through his leg, making him fall to the ground as he screams in pain. The banshee is now screaming as well, seemingly because she is also in pain as a result of straining herself so hard, immediately after her awakening. While the banshee is distracted, my father finally notices me, and he also sees the pitchfork that I am holding in my hands. "Barry," my father says, "quick, throw me the pitchfork." I say nothing to my father, and I continue to stare at him while I keep cursing the god of time in my mind more and more with each passing second. "Barry," my father says, this time in a more desperate tone, "there is no time. You need to give me the pitchfork." Unfortunately, the banshee had already recovered, and she was preparing for a third and final attack. My father could not do anything to escape due to the large wound in his leg, and he was impaled once more, this time through the chest, which killed him almost instantly. My mother screams in terror as she sees my father die before her eyes. She is now much too scared to move, but before her dying movements, she manages to utter a few last words. "Barry, please, save me," she says. Just like before, I do not move from my spot. I do not answer her, and the banshee kills her by slitting her throat with a dagger made of sharpened rock. When the banshee sees me standing there looking at my parents' corpses, she begins to laugh. The exact same sinister laugh that I remember clearly to this day. And now, I finally know what she was laughing about. She wasn't laughing because she enjoyed killing my parents. She was laughing at me. It wasn't that I arrived too late. That was never what happened. I was there when my parents were being attacked. I saw it happen before my eyes. I had the pitchfork in my hands, ready to strike. But when I got close to the banshee and saw her monstrous figure staring at me with that vicious look in her eyes, I simply froze. I completely froze in fear, and I couldn't even hear my father and mother begging me to help them. It was only when my little brother was almost about to be killed by the banshee as well that I finally mustered up the courage to attack her. That's what really happened 15 years ago, and what I've completely blocked from my mind for more than half of my life. This was the one and only time I ever froze up from fear. In fact, if I come to think of it, what happened after this incident was that I developed an almost suicidal tendency to completely ignore danger, no matter how dire the situation was. It's almost as if my desire for something like this to never happen again was so strong that it fried my brain and eliminated my instinct of self-preservation. So many things are starting to make sense now. I can't believe that I've been keeping this memory repressed for so long. I suppose I have the god of time to thank for this stunning revelation. I would shake his hand, but with the amount of rage that I'm feeling towards him right now, I'm afraid that I might crush it by mistake. The banshee is now starting to chase after my brother. I waste no time, and I dash towards her, impaling her through the back with my pitchfork, without giving her any chance to retaliate. As the banshee slowly dies before my eyes, a white light once again fills the area, and I get transported through time once more. This time, however, I'm not worried. I already know that I have passed this. This time, however, I'm not worried. I already know that I have passed this stage of the ritual. Just as I was expecting, as soon as the light fades, I find myself back in my 28-year-old body, surrounded by all of my friends, as Araka lets out one of her usual laughs. "It looks like you're one of the first to pass this part of the ritual, Berry Boy," Araka says. "Come, have a seat and let us enjoy ourselves while we watch the rest of your friends suffering in their own trials." I take a quick glance around to see what our current situation is. The god of time is no longer anywhere to be seen, but it doesn't seem like his departure affected the ritual in any way. Darren, Kate, Layla, Hadrick, and the Revenant appear to be in some form of trance. Similar to the one in which the Revenant was when she first arrived to this place. Their eyes are bright yellow, and they're just staring in front of themselves without being aware of our presence. All of them are standing in place right where I left them, except for the Revenant, who now has her feet on the ground instead of floating in mid-air like before. In the meantime, Melindra, Luna, and presumably Flower are all out of their trances, and they're looking at me attentively. What do you mean you want to watch my friends during their trials?" I ask Araka, once I get a good grasp on our situation. "You have a way to see what's happening in the past?" "Sure," Araka says. "It's not that hard. They're all connected to the Magium right now, so if you know how to link yourself up to their auras properly, you should be able to see what they're seeing." "The Magium," I say, as I suddenly remember the discussion that Araka had with the God of Time before he sent us back in time. You were saying before that the Magium is the one that sent the Revenant here to give us the prophecy. What did you mean by that? Are you saying that the Magium is a person? Araka laughs. "Oh, Luna, did you hear that? He asked me He asked me if the Magium is a person. I heard him, Aluna says in a tritone, as Araka continues to laugh in the background. Of course you wouldn't answer my question, I say as I look towards Araka's amulet. Never mind the Magium, then. What can you tell me about the others' rituals? Which ones are you talking about? Araka says. The ones that are already past, or the ones still inside the trance? Both, I guess. The ones that are both, I guess. The ones that are still inside the rituals, obviously. Smart Berry, I'm inclined to go with both. But I don't really care too much. Actually, you know what? It's time for me to end. Holy shit, I've been reading for 2.5 hours almost. No wonder my throat hurts. Okay. I mean, do you know what you guys were signing up for when you voted for me to keep reading? Transfer checkpoint. And I've only used 1 and 2, so back to cloud menu. Back. Quick game. Goodbye. Alright, well, thank you very much for hanging out, everyone. It's lovely I really enjoy having you guys help participate. It makes it a lot more fun. I love seeing your guys' choices throughout the game. Sorry about that. But it is time for me to end. Laughs and mic reverb. I mean, it makes it better. I really need to figure out how to fake laugh. Should, like, look up videos on YouTube or something, learning how to fake laugh. Okay, so, I'm gonna stop the recording now.